and I'm talking about CnP A Assignment 2, and this is the unit plan justification for it. Now, I know that in the assignment description it said to do an audio, but I decided to do a video because I can kind of walk through this. So if you'd like to just listen to the audio, I'll try to make that work as well. What I have here is a Foundations Year 11 unit plan. It's a 16 lesson unit plan. This could be lengthened out to cover more review of these topics, but in its more condensed format, it would be 16 lessons. It covers measurement and geometry. Now, the rationale I did for choosing that curriculum is that measurement and geometry is a precursor to level 6 or NCEA 1. So we're preparing for NCEA. There are real world examples, contexts of this where you've got perimeter, like fencing, you've got surface area, like wrapping paper, you've got volume for storage, for going over and buying materials at Miter 10. There's all sorts of real life contexts to measurement and geometry. Also, this content is really able to be related to Te Ao Maori. It's the cultures of the Maori customs. You've got non-standard units like Maro and Kumi and Fananyang. Nyanga. I'm still working on the terminology, but we have mentioned these different standards of units. We have tuku panel layouts. I was able to ask the students about that in class, or I could ask the students about that in class. We could do finding volume, and therefore, how many bags of dirt are needed for your kuya to make a kumara garden. There's all sorts of opportunities there to combine and integrate Te Ao Maori. And you've got awesome fun group activities that can happen from this, where students are able to come up with different approaches, which we'll get into soon. But as a group, they're able to come up with those different ideas on how to problem solve. And different activities like bingo, like perimeter bingo, perimeter or area treasure hunt, measuring things in the room. There's a lot of real world activities that can happen from this. And then I also have some available, not me, but New Zealand curriculum has rich learning tasks and learning progression tasks that are available online, and we'll be able to get into those as well. Some of the pedagogies and approaches, the first step would be just explicit formulaic walkthroughs. So here I am telling them, hey, to get the volume of this prism, you have to follow this formula. To get the perimeter, you add up all the sides. There's these formulas that they would have been made privy to in the past. So we're doing review. The year 10, they would have covered these things. So here we're doing review. We're preparing for NCEA. We could do more inquiry-based learning as well. That's be another approach. So the students are encouraged to actively explore the different approaches towards problems. We have structured differentiation that we could use through Bloom's taxonomy to scaffold in order to encourage not just so much to describe, but explain, justify, evaluate, and push learners to even higher thinking with specifically measurement and geometry. Differentiated instruction to meet students at their readiness levels. So we've got, content that we've covered. We've got, as far as like providing multiple ways to engage in the same data. So, we could do the formulas, we can do the work examples that I work out as a teacher. We could invite the students to work out problems first on paper and then up on the board. We have group activities, we've got worksheets, we've got textbooks. There's all sorts of avenues that could be used here. You've the process that we can use, whether it be unit conversion or area of complex shapes, volumes of complex shapes. Each of these subjects have multiple approaches. Like if I were to give one, for example, if you have like a rectangle and you want to get the volume of it, you've got to get the you've got to get the area of the rectangle at the bottom, and then you multiply that by the height. But maybe someone else wants to take it at a different approach. Maybe they look at the problem at a different angle. And so measurement and geometry allows for multiple approaches to the same problem. We could present these through the iPad on the projector while I'm writing out and walking around the room. We could have verbal reasoning explanations. There's all sorts of ways to have differentiated instruction. Another one is to weave in UDL. It's really important, universal design for learning. So we want to have representation, action and expression, and then engagement with the material. So representation, we've got diagrams, we've got instructional videos. There's some YouTube videos that explain these concepts very tangibly. And then we want to encourage the students to engage with the material. You've got sequencing and lessons. So this I used primarily, we've got the achievement standard that we're following, where we have metric units using decimals, we've got perimeter, we've got area. I used a couple textbooks in order to come up with how to sequence the concepts here. One of them was Walker Maths 1.5 on measurement. You can tell here as we crack it open, you've got the different table of contents, which according to my bright light you cannot read, but you've got 2D formula, 3D converting units, you've got choosing sensible units, we've got perimeter, we've got area. So using these contexts, which relate to the achievement standards, as you can see on my screen, this sequencing is available in many different resources. We do want to follow that spiral structure, revisiting core skills in later lessons. So I think this unit plan touches on that. And then we've got, following the workbooks, like I mentioned earlier. We want to make sure we have differentiation for diverse learners. So we're including bilingual vocabulary cards. There's many different places for that. I have one here, and it's in the resources and materials portion of this unit plan. You can see there in the Maori and the English glossary. So we've got a lot of mathematical terms that are available on the NZQA website. And for us, there's so many different terms that we can use here. So as a math teacher, I'd be checking on this, trying to integrate the language as much as possible. We've got visual aids that are relevant to the Maori cultures. So like that Kumara garden that I mentioned earlier, we've got fish nets we could use. There's things around the room that can be used as well. We want to create tiered worksheets. So you've got your core, the content all students must master, the stretch goals, which are primarily word problems, content, which would be that same information but in the form of word problems, so that way they're able to use those in assessments. And then the challenges for the students that find they need an extra, they're motivated through an extra push, are the rich learning tasks and the learning progression tasks. And we have those here are some good examples in the actual lesson itself. So here in lesson 1, we've got a rich learning task called Walk the Line. And if we look at it here, it's not so much a problem where it gives you an explicit answer, but we have down below a couple worked examples that students had used to looking at a topography map and taking various approaches towards this. A lot of these rich tasks or the learning progression tasks, they're similar, where you've got multiple approaches to the same problem. We want to make sure that we're fostering critical thinking here. Rich learning tasks and learning progression tasks do that. We also want to have students, it's more than just saying, hey, here's the formula, plug it in. We want to walk into why. Why does that formula work in this way? And the repetition of looking at the formula through various locations, like in this case with the Apple charger, if you wanted to get the volume of this, you'd have to get the volume of the larger rectangle, but then also subtract the portion that shouldn't be there as well. And how would you do that? Would you get the volume of the two rectangles, or would you get the larger one and then subtract? There's many different approaches towards that. We want to make sure that students are thinking critically on these problems. And Te Ao Maori, Ta Tayako, and Pasa, that we talked about in class, primarily in previous modules. We want to make sure we've got whanangatanga, making group tasks inclusive, encouraging connections with students. So it's important to have those different modes of the classroom. You've got the individual class, like the individual work where it's quiet, mimics that of an assessment. You've got quiet group activity where whispering voices are permitted. And then you've got more of the loud, boisterous, moving around the room, crafting, creating presentations, something quite loud. We want to make sure we have all of those so the learners that benefit on all of those environments can have them. And yeah, we want to honor Maori measuring systems and ensuring cultural responsive materials, we mentioned earlier. Formative assessment and design. So another thing would be, the one that I'd want to use is a Google form. An example of that would be like here, where we have an actual Google form itself. If we click on this link, this would be given to the students and they would fill it in. They would pop in their answers as they see fit. In here they would do the work and then they would try and answer out. And I'm just gonna click through these so we have an idea of what this looks like at the end. We submit it and the students immediately get the feedback that they did on the classroom or during that homework. They immediately get that feedback. There's no confusion. And in here we have the feedback where these are worked out and they can get an idea of how well they did, why they're working in this particular way. For instance, here, this one, you've got the feedback of getting the volume of the rectangle and then getting the volume of the semicircle and combining them together. Here, this is perimeter, so following those steps, you've got this shape worked out, so you get the idea. There's the students get that immediate feedback so they know how they're doing. And we want to make sure that we incorporate this into self-assessment as well. We could do this in the classroom where they have a workbook, they're working through the problems, and then we say, hey, pause, flip to the back, pull out a red pen, look at your answers in class. Honor system, but really it's to their own benefit if they mark it truthfully. Same thing with these grades here. I wouldn't want to use the score for anything, but instead to be able to look at the insights here and say, my students, we really need to focus on problem number 1 or 2, something like that. And yeah, that's the justification for my unit plan that I have.